Hi, hope you're doing well. I want to talk about one of my favorite topics is space propaganda and looking at the beginning of how people got to the point where outer space and space travel is just a given and everyone knows that it's possible and we do it all the time. So let's back up to the beginning and think about it. Okay, I've really picked this apart. Yeah, you think you're going to love this analysis. I go through a lot of different topics from the early 1950s and put it all together and show you who the players were, how it was done, and a couple other interesting things along the way. So let's start here because 1951, Disney puts out Alice in Wonderland. Obviously, everyone knows, if you want to learn the truth, you have to choose you have to choose to learn. You have to choose to accept the information, which is a conscious decision, which we consider taking the red pill, through the movie The Matrix, that analogy. And then you go down the proverbial rabbit hole, which obviously comes from Alice in Wonderland. And so this is a trip. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but I'm going to narrate this a little bit, but I'm going to show this about 2 minutes, and I'm going to show you Alice in Wonderland here as she goes down the rabbit hole and exactly what happens.
My, what a peculiar place to have a party. You know, Dinah, we really shouldn't be doing this. After all, we haven't been invited, and curiosity often leads to trouble.
Curiosity often leads to trouble.
Goodbye, Dinah. Goodbye. Well, after this, I shall think nothing of falling downstairs. Goodness. What if I should fall right through the center of... and come out the other side where people walk upside down? Oh, but that's silly. Nobody...
And then she gets at the bottom of the rabbit hole. So what's at the bottom of the rabbit hole? Did you see it?
What if I should fall right through the center of...
What if I should fall right through the center of the earth?
And come out the other side where people walk up...
And come out the other side where people walk upside down. And then she says, oh, that's silly.
Upside down. Oh, but that's silly.
But that's silly. This is 1951, right? So Walt Disney and these guys knew the true nature of the world, and they put it right in the movie. And then she falls down, she hits the bottom of the rabbit hole, and then she goes in to this other world.
Nobody... Oh! Oh, Mr. Rabbit!
What a trip, huh? If you haven't seen that before, I thought that was pretty amazing. Let's start off with Arthur C. Clarke. He was a visionary, right? He's a science fiction writer. He helped Kubrick create 2001: Space Odyssey in 1968, which was a propaganda film to make people believe that we can go to the moon. And they faked it a year later in 1969. And he's credited with envisioning the mechanical floating magic satellites. And he says, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And he wrote some books. I believe it was the Sentinel back in the 30s. And he wrote about these satellites that orbited the Earth and created that illusion. And then, interestingly enough, the actual, the alleged satellites that go around the Earth in the alleged outer space, these flying around, are said to be in the CLARKE belt, which is a area of this outer space that is paid to pay homage to this guy who created the whole thing. That's just an illusion in our minds. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So Walt Disney and Wernher von Braun, these guys were bros. These guys, this was 1954. 1955, they came out with Man in Space and a couple other feature films that were run on, well, they were actually television shows that came out on CBS, but it was like 30 million people watched it. This is at the time there's only 3 channels on television, and this Man in Space was everybody saw this. Everybody was fascinated. And everybody loved the idea, which is awesome, right? In these days, we're thinking, man, we can go to outer space. Now they're saying we can go to the moon. And just building this in our minds throughout the 1950s. And it's quite a thing. So that's kind of what I want to do, is show you all of this. Disneyland itself, the park in Anaheim, California, opened up 1955, the same year that Man in Space came out. And this photograph here was in 1954. These guys were both working for the government on other projects that were intending to, it's basically propaganda. The government and basically the National Academy of Sciences and IBM were supplying a computer, asked Disney to make a film project called Vanguard. They wanted the support and enthusiasm of the American public for their plans had been generated for the first 2 space shows. They're trying to create, they did create a show called Mars and Beyond. Back then, they're talking about going to Mars and just getting that in people's mind, that you can physically go there. Let's see, 1957, Russia orbited Sputnik 1. So this is at the same time. The first artificial satellite marked the beginning of the space race. And a month later, they launched another Sputnik 2 with the dog. Okay, sounds fun. Sounds like a good time for that dog flying around. The dog didn't go up. You didn't know. Let's see. Von Braun boldly announced November 8, 1957, the United States would have a satellite in orbit within 90 days. Wow, that's a big statement from the Nazi. Von Braun no longer had any time for a Disney television show, as he raced on the presidential order to put America in space as quickly as possible. Mars and Beyond aired in 1957. 2 days later, the Vanguard rocket blew up. They got to blow some things up sometime to, keep the illusion going. Can't all be good. SpaceX does that. They'll land a rocket in the middle of the ocean on a barge, a 12-foot wide pencil on a barge in the middle of the ocean, and every once in a while I got to blow it up to make it seem like it's hard to do. That's so funny. True to his word, von Braun successfully launched Explorer 1 January 31st, 1958. Wow, so he did it, right? He said he's going to do it in 90 days, and he did it. Good on him. It discovered the Van Allen radiation belt. Vanguard 1 was later successfully launched on March 17, 1958. And it goes on and on and on. So basically, you have the beginning of Disney and Von Braun working to create, I think they said that they wanted to go with Disney because he was more family friendly and trustworthy to carry the message, basically.
Walter Elias Disney, the person, was born on December 5, 1901, but Walt Disney, the personality, was born on October 27, 1954, with the premiere of the television show Disneyland. To help fund his theme park, Walt and his brother Roy entered an agreement with the television network ABC. ABC agreed to help finance the park on the condition that Walt would create an anthology series for the channel. This turned out to be a lucrative deal for both parties. On top of the funding, Walt had a platform to promote the park. The Disneyland show would showcase some of Disney's old animations and films, as well as present new content. The key element that would elevate this anthology series was Walt himself, who would host the program. While he had performed on screen in specials and events before, this would be his first consistent role as a television personality, and the immediate power of his charm cannot be overstated. The Walt Disney character was warm, funny, and all around calming. It was the mentor-like figure that Walt had always wanted to be for his animators. He had become Uncle Walt. But Uncle Walt could project more than just tranquility. The personality could also exude excitement. Excitement for Disneyland's future, and the future in general. Through his television show and his park, Walt was positioning himself as a futurist, arguably the most prominent and influential of his time. On March 22, 1952, the weekly magazine Collier's published the first in a series of articles titled "Man Will Conquer Space Soon." It was one of the first prominent and extensive speculations on the real-world possibility of space travel. It also positioned the prospect of sending humanity to space as a destiny of sorts. Space was not just another frontier to conquer, but it was, as the magazine put it, the last frontier. This sense of optimism and purpose was supplemented by prominent scientists, all of which came together to formulate a rough plan for space travel using their expertise and the available knowledge. At the forefront of this team was rocket scientist and ex-Nazi Wernher von Braun. Von Braun had joined the Nazi Party and
Okay, so we'll come back to that, but you have that. So let's go back and see what this Collier's article is all about. So Collier's article, Conquest of Space, 1952 through 1954. Collier's magazine published a series of articles that predicted some aspects of the future with uncanny accuracy. Can you believe it? Maybe it's because they just said they were going to do it and then they made it up as they went. Okay. The articles came out with 8 installments, written by members of the panel: Wernher von Braun, Fred Whipple. So let's see who Fred Whipple is. Fred Whipple was got into astronomy, and while in graduate school, he helped map the orbit of the newly discovered planet Pluto. At the time, if you don't know the story, Pluto the planet and Pluto the dog were both invented in the same year. And I believe it was 1931, but it's right the early 30s. But anyways, they were both discovered or created the same year. And if you talk to the people in the know that were interviewed, that they were involved, both of them say, or anybody says, that it was not named one after the other or vice versa. It was just a coincidence. Okay, so you've got, this is a NASA picture of Pluto, and let's see here. There it is. There's Pluto, and do you see anything here? Rough, rough. Okay, so this is what NASA puts out to mock us. There it is. Pluto the dog on Pluto the planet on official NASA computer-generated images. Isn't that insulting? Joseph Kaplan. I didn't look that far into him. I literally just went through a lot of this stuff by memory, or about an hour of just picking these things apart, taking some notes. I would just challenge yourself to do this for 10 minutes and just follow one rabbit hole after another. and it's just the most obvious thing in the world. So Heinz Haber, he was also a Nazi Operation Paperclip scientist, and Willy Ley, he was a Operation Paperclip science fiction propaganda writer. So he was not a scientist, but the United States government decided to bring this ex-Nazi in as a science fiction writer to write propaganda information about the possibility of going into outer space. Isn't that bizarre?
Out to Von Braun, asking him if he would be willing to present some of the information he published in the Collier's articles on the Disneyland show. Recognizing the power of the platform, Von Braun agreed, bringing his colleagues and their collective knowledge on.
I want to point out here, this is Jack Parsons, JPL, Jet Propulsion's laboratory. Jack Parsons was an occultist. He was best friends with L. Ron Hubbard, and he was a part of he was the head of the OTO. It's also a sect of the Freemasons, and he was the head of the chapter in Anaheim. Okay, skipping over here. I forgot to get his name, but this is Aleister Crowley. So Jack Parsons was buddies with this guy. Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was the head of the OTO, and later Jack Parsons became the head. But these guys were buddies, along with L. Ron Hubbard, who later created the sham of the Church of Scientology. And there's a whole other side story to that. But these are the guys you're dealing with that, created NASA and the illusion of outer space.
To the program. The first Disneyland Tomorrowland episode, titled Man in Space and directed by Kimball, would premiere on ABC on March 9th, 1955.
In our modern world, everywhere we look, we see the influence science has upon our daily lives. Discoveries that were miracles a few short years ago are accepted as commonplace today.
The special stood as an antithesis of sorts to the space sci-fi genre common in theaters at the time. And Walt's design firm, WED Enterprises, went back to the drawing board. The new plan was to construct 2 large exhibition halls to take up the majority of the land space. What would go inside of these, no one knew, but at the very least the structures would be under development. A young designer, Bob Gurr, was put in charge of the car ride, to be named Autopia. Autopia would showcase the future of highway transportation. Von Braun and his team, while developing more specials for the Disneyland show with Kimball, assisted in the design of the rocket simulator, to be named Rocket to the Moon. Wood rushed to find sponsors for the Tomorrowland exhibit space, and given that the park was less than 6 months from opening, he was taking whoever he could get. Luckily, Tomorrowland sold itself. As proved by the 1933 Century of Progress Fair and the fairs that followed, almost any company from any industry was eager to brand themselves as a product of the future, especially in the 1950s, with every new product, material, and company wanting the American public to envision them alongside the modern home. Despite the short amount of time to do so, Wood was able to secure a significant amount of sponsorships from such forward-thinking brands as Richfield Oil, Monsanto Chemical Company, and the National Lead Company, which owned Dutch Boy Paints. The lead paint of the future. Rocket to the Moon was to be sponsored by Trans World Airlines, and outside of the attraction would stand the Moonliner, a 76-foot tall model of a rocket, taller than the park's castle, designed by Disney artist John Hench and Von Braun. WED was also working on 2 additional attractions.
I'd like to present to you a gentleman of considerable renown. This is Dr. Heinz Haber, and
Okay, Heinz Haber, he was in that Collier's group back in the 30s, right? So now they're parading this guy around to Disney to carry on the propaganda. It's the same guys all the time.
I'm sure you will remember him from Walt Disney's Tomorrowland. Go ahead, Doctor. Please tell us about it.
Bob, I must just explain to these kids that I have here an atom of uranium.
I see.
But of course, it's only a loaded mousetrap.
It is.
Your suspicions are correct. That man was also a Nazi. Roaming Tomorrowland was the Tomorrowland Spaceman, dressed in tubes and sporting a fishbowl helmet. There would be many iterations of the Spaceman throughout the years, and he would most often roam the land talking to children, sometimes selling balloons. He would soon be joined by the Tomorrowland Space Girl, and the two would roam the land as the Tomorrowland Space Couple. And that was opening day Tomorrowland. It was not a lot, but it was...
Okay, this always sticks in my mind. 1955, after that, little children and generations for all of those years, 70 years now, have this illusion of Space Boy and outer space and how cool that is. And it comes from when we're born, because it's just like everyone knows, duh, everyone knows. So of course it's going to be weird to say it's not true, because everyone knows, right? Okay, just one more. Through the years, there's, TV show after TV show just imprinting this in our minds, like outer space is so cool. I wish I could do that. I want to go to outer space. Let's go on a spaceship. That's just what we're fed over and over and over. And it's not like everyone's in on it. It's just second nature. And there's a small group that know what's going on.
Ironically, the man that had inspired much of the land would be the same that would help render it obsolete. In 1957, the Soviet Union had launched the satellite Sputnik 1. The following year, the United States would establish NASA, and none other than ex-Nazi Werner von Braun would lead the US in the escalating space race. Now, in the late 60s, with manned spaceflight achieved and a moon landing imminent, even the most optimistic parts of Tomorrowland were becoming a reality. An overhaul was needed, and in 1966, Disney and his crew began drafting plans for a new Tomorrowland. While the Matterhorn, the monorail, and submarine voyage would remain unchanged, the rest of Tomorrowland would be walled off, with a model of the new ambitious plans placed outside the walls for guests to view. This meant that the Clock of the World, the Monsanto Hall of Chemistry.
So what they're saying is that now there's these new plans, and that they've got these new outer space plans, so they need to scrap a lot of the things that are not as in-depth space related and keep adding in more space. Outer space propaganda. And that's what they've continued to do the whole time since then. Okay, with all of that, I'm just about done, but I want to show you one other thing that is just amazing. In 1959, Nikita Khrushchev was the president, chairman, what do you call him, of Russia, USSR. The Russian leader had never been to the United States, ever. And 1959, this is right in the middle of the Cold War, the beginning of the Cold War, right when the space race starts up, when no Russian leader has ever been to the United States, comes and takes a trip to the United States and tours the United States. And what does he do? He complains about not being allowed to go to Disneyland. So everybody that's seeing this on the TV, because everybody's watching this guy's just saying, I want to go to Disneyland. They won't let me to go to Disneyland because it's not safe, right? So what would you want to do if you heard that? I want to go to Disneyland, and everybody wants to go check it out. And, if you didn't know, all the past Russian leaders, Stalin, Lenin, Freemasons, and Nikita Khrushchev was just a puppet. He was only in for a short time. So check this out.
Mayor Paulson, the mayor of Los Angeles, said that I will not recommend you to go to the Disneyland because it will be unsafe. And my father was very angry.
When I came here to the city, I was given a plan, a program of what I was to be shown and whom I was to meet here. But just now, I was told that I couldn't go to Disneyland. I asked, why not? And just listen to what I was told, to what reason I was told. We, which means the American authority, cannot guarantee your security if you go there. What is it? Do you have rocket launching pads there? I don't know. What is it? Is there an epidemic of cholera there or something? Or have gangsters taken hold of the place that can destroy me? And I say I would very much like to go and see Disneyland. For me, such a situation is inconceivable. I cannot find words to explain this to my people. I thought I could come here and not have to sit in the sweltering heat in a closed car under your hot sun. I thought I could come here as a free man, as a guest of the free American people. This fact can evoke nothing but profound disappointment on my part.
Personally, I knew nothing about Disneyland. I knew the Disney movies, Bambi and all others, and we liked them. But it was not about Disneyland itself. It was about managing my father not in the proper way, and he was very sensitive for this.
From an entertainer's point of view, what did you think of the show today?
It was a very interesting afternoon.
What did you find most interesting?
Nearly everything.
What did you think of the ad-libs?
Interesting. Very interesting.
From one Hollywood spectacular to another, Soundstage 8, where the Cole Porter film musical Can Can is in production.
Hollywood, baby. Marilyn Monroe. Nikita Khrushchev playing his role. It's Hollywood, man. It's Hollywood. It's all an illusion. So I'm going to wrap it up there, but it's deep. Isn't that a trip? Isn't that amazing? So take care. I'm going to get going here. There's so much more. I just took half an hour, and just put that together. And I have so much more. It's so fascinating to see where this stuff came from and how we got here. But that's the beginning of it. So please share this. Thanks for taking the time. Bye.